Today, we're going over the craziest drugs used in World War II. The pills, shots, and chocolate bars that armies fed their own men by the millions. Number 1. Pervitin. It's May 1940, and a German tank crew is rolling through the Ardennes forest. They're on their third night with no sleep. And yet every man in that cramped steel box is wide awake, heart pounding, with a little white tablet melting on his tongue. That tablet is methamphetamine. Meth. And the German army is handing it out like candy. The drug itself actually came out of Japan. A chemist named Nagai Nagayoshi cooked up the first batch back in 1893. And in 1919, another Japanese chemist, Akira Ogata, turned it into the crystal form we'd recognize today. Decades later, a company in Berlin called Temmler figured out a cheaper, faster way to make it, slapped a label on it, and in 1938 started selling it as Pervitin. And Pervitin was fully legal. You could walk into any German pharmacy and buy meth right off the shelf. No prescription, no questions asked. Students took it to cram for exams. Factory workers took it to push through double shifts. There were even chocolates, Hildebrand brand, with meth baked right in, sold to housewives to nibble with their afternoon coffee. Then the army got involved. Between April and July of 1940, Germany stamped out more than 35 million tablets and shipped them to the soldiers and pilots about to invade France. That is enough pills to stack as tall as 30 giraffes standing on each other's shoulders. But before you picture every soldier swallowing them by the fistful, do the math with me. Spread across the whole army, 35 million tablets works out to about 3 pills per man, per month. So this was rationed speed. And even rationed, it did the job. Hunger disappeared. Fear went quiet. The need to sleep just switched off. Tank crews drove for 3 days straight. Pilots flew mission after mission in the dark. That whole blitzkrieg, Germany's lightning-fast invasion of France, was running, at least partly, on a little white pill. The trouble came when the drug wore off. Soldiers coming down off Pervitin were wrecked, slumped over their rifles for a day or two, completely useless. Some of them died from it. So by April 1941, the army quietly pulled Pervitin off the mass supply list and locked it behind a doctor's prescription. Number 2. Benzedrine. The Allies saw all of this and wanted in. Their pill was Benzedrine, and it started somewhere deeply unglamorous. The pharmacy shelf, as a cure for a stuffy nose. Back in 1934, an American company called Smith, Klein, and French packed amphetamine into a little inhaler and sold it in drugstores as a decongestant. You were supposed to sniff it to clear your sinuses. But people caught on fast, and soldiers and students started cracking the inhalers open and swallowing the strip inside for the buzz. A few years later, the world's armies figured out that the same chemical could keep a tired man awake and sharp for days. The story goes that the British pried open a crashed German plane in 1940, found it stuffed with Pervitin, and decided they wanted a pill of their own. I'd take that one with a grain of salt, but the timing lines up. So they handed it out. Bomber pilots got Benzedrine to drag them through those endless night raids over Germany. 8 hours in the dark with their eyes burning. One pill standing between them and sleep at the controls. On the ground, General Montgomery passed it to his 8th Army right before the Second Battle of El Alamein in October 1942, sending exhausted men into the desert wired and ready to fight. By the end of the war, the British military had chewed through more than 72 million Benzedrine tablets, and the Americans burned roughly the same. But the drug had a nasty downside. Benzedrine masked a man's exhaustion. The tiredness kept stacking up the whole time, hidden under the chemical. So a pilot felt sharp and fearless for hours, while his body quietly fell apart underneath him. Then the pill wore off, and all of it landed at once. Men flew high on Benzedrine, came down, and hit a wall, drained to nothing. Number 3. Truth drug. Picture a quiet room in 1943. An American agent and a prisoner sit across a table, chatting like old friends. The prisoner is loose, relaxed, talking freely, and he has no idea his cigarette has been spiked. Behind the wall, another man writes down every word. A year earlier, American spies had gone hunting for a drug that could pull secrets out of a man without him ever knowing. The head of the OSS, the wartime grandfather of the CIA, was a man named Wild Bill Donovan, and he wanted something that loosened the prisoner's tongue while he sat there thinking he was among friends. His people ran through the options. Mescaline left test subjects too sick to talk. Scopolamine did the same. So they landed on a clear, tasteless liquid squeezed out of cannabis and gave it a flat little code name, TD, the truth drug. The clever part was the delivery. They dripped the extract into a cigarette or stir it into a plate of food, hand it over with a smile, and watch the target go soft and chatty. The agent running these tests was a hard-nosed narcotics cop named George Hunter White, and in 1943, he tried it on a New York mobster named August Del Gracio. The story even goes that White dosed a few scientists from the Manhattan Project, fishing to see if America's atomic secrets would come spilling out. So did it work? Not really. A man on TD would melt into his chair, crack jokes, ramble about his childhood, and stroll out an hour later having given up nothing worth a thing. As a truth serum, it flopped. The OSS shelved it. But the hunt for a chemical that could crack open the human mind never stopped, and it rolled straight into the CIA's MK Ultra experiments years later. Number 4. Eucadol. Then there's he who shall not be named for monetization purposes, the Austrian painter. He had a personal doctor, a heavyset man named Theodore Morel, and Morel was the only person he trusted to put a needle in him. Morel kept a careful diary of every shot he gave, and in it, he referred to the painter only by a code name, Patient A. That diary is staggering. On a busy day, Morel jabbed the painter as many as 20 times, working through something like 74 different drugs and tonics, everything from plain vitamins to extracts ground out of animal organs. The heavy stuff came next. According to the Arthur Norman Oler, who spent years decoding Morel's messy handwriting, the doctor started injecting the painter with Eucadol in the summer of 1943. Eucadol is oxycodone, basically a cousin of heroin. The painter was soon getting it every other day, which is the exact rhythm you'd expect from an addict. On that drug, he could sit through a briefing about the collapsing Eastern Front and stay calm, warm, even cheerful, while his generals watched the map bleed red. I do want to be straight with you, though. This is Oler's reading of those notes, and plenty of historians push back hard, saying he stretched a few vague entries way too far. The painter's whole addiction story sits in a gray area, so hold it loosely. How it ended is clearer. By early 1945, Allied bombs were flattening the factories that made Germany's drugs, and the painter's supply dried up. He went down into that Berlin bunker with the injections gone, and his body began to fall apart. Hand shaking, mind fraying. People still argue over how much of that was Parkinson's disease and how much was simply a Junkian withdrawal with nowhere left to score. Number 5. D9. We finish on the most desperate one of all. By late 1944, Germany has already lost the war, and everyone in the high command knows it. The Eastern Front is caving in. Allied bombers are gutting German cities every single night, and the army is running out of bodies to throw at the problem. So a team of Nazi chemists get handed one last, frankly insane job. Build a pill that turns a worn-out soldier into something that just doesn't stop. The man running it is a drug scientist named Gerard Orchakowski, working out of a lab in the port city of Kiel. What his team builds is every heavy drug we've talked about crushed into a single tablet. 5 milligrams of oxycodone for the pain, 5 milligrams of cocaine to fire up the nerves, 3 milligrams of methamphetamine to kill the need for sleep. 2 of those 3 you've already met in this video. They called it D9, and the goal, in the words of one of the researchers, was to redefine the limits of human endurance. To find out what the pill actually did to a body, they took it somewhere they could test it on people they treated as expendable. Sachsenhausen concentration camp. Prisoners were loaded down with heavy packs and marched in circles around the yard, hour after hour, while the chemists stood there with stopwatches writing down the distance. Each pack weighed 20 kilograms, about the weight of a full-grown bulldog strapped to your back. And on paper, the pill did exactly what the Nazis wanted. Some prisoners marched up to 90 kilometers without a single rest, pushed far past the point where a body is supposed to quit. Most dropped after about 24 hours and never got up, left where they fell. The plan was to hand D9 to the crews of the Niger and Biber, tiny one-man submarines set out to die against Allied ships. Although one researcher argues the Navy skipped the pill entirely and just dosed those crews with straight cocaine instead. Either way, the war was over before D9 ever reached mass production. So there it is. Germany drove its tanks on Provident. The Allies flew their bombers on Benzedrine. American spies dosed prisoners with a truth drug that never quite worked. The painter kept his doctor on call with a loaded syringe of Eucadol. And in a Kiel lab, the Nazis crushed all of it into one pill they barely finished in time. Every side fought the same war, and every side fought it on drugs.